understand probably at least some of you have peripheral neuropathy. All right. Usually I put this on a bigger screen, but we couldn't do that this evening, on TV or a big screen. So I'm still going to use it, but you might not be able to see it too well. And I don't even need to do it, but I'll just kind of go through it now. I give talks on peripheral neuropathy. Tonight I'm only going to spend about a half an hour, and even less than that, because I'm going to demonstrate peripheral neuropathy here, or I'm going to demonstrate the rebuilder, which is one therapy that has been found to be very successful for peripheral neuropathy. So this is going to be an abbreviated talk. Now I give longer talks. In fact, if you're interested, I'm giving one Tuesday at noon in Bloomington. So you're free to talk to Rachel if you want to come to that. And I spend a longer period of time. Okay? So peripheral neuropathy is truly a neurometabolic problem. Now, by neuro, I mean neuro is your neurology. It's your brain, your spinal cord, your nerves, and then your receptors. Now, when you have peripheral neuropathy, most people get it in their feet, but you can have it in your hands, and those are the two most common places to have it. And what gets damaged is the little nerves and the receptors. And you have different kinds of receptors. You have receptors that are touch. You have receptors that are temperature. You got pain receptors also. So what symptoms do you think you could have if you had peripheral neuropathy? Well, you could have loss of sensation, like numbness. You could have tingling. You could have pain. Those are probably the three most common things. And you could have balance problems too. Because in your feet, what do you think tells your brain where you're at? Your nerves do. And if your nerves are like numb, or they don't know what's going on, then you can have balance problems. And a lot of people are concerned about balance problems, because you know the number one cause of death after 65 is falling. You know, and then the ramifications of falling, whether you hit your head or break a hip or whatever that is. So there's the neural part, that's the brain and the nervous system. Then there's the metabolic part. Now metabolic means chemistry. So chemistry. So that could be the most common cause of peripheral neuropathy is diabetes. Why? Because you don't get the fuel, the sugar, into the nerves, and then they go numb, and they don't function right. And then when you don't have good circulation in your legs, then some people even have to have surgery to remove toes or feet if it gets really bad, especially with diabetic neuropathy. So that's the most common type of neuropathy. Now, another common type of neuropathy is from chemotherapy. And that's probably what you're interested here, because it can be an effect. Now, a lot of times, though, you have to realize that peripheral neuropathy is multi-causal. There's hardly ever just one cause. Now, you could probably say maybe diabetes could give you one cause. But maybe if your blood sugar, you get some insulin resistance, and maybe you don't have good circulation for some reason, and maybe you have chemotherapy, or maybe you're on a statin drug. All of those add up to you don't get good oxygen and fuel to your nerves, and then they quit working properly. So how does it develop? Well, again, you got the brain, the spinal cord, and your nerves. And in your nerves, you have peripheral nerves, and those nerves have coverings, like with myelin sheets, and they have high metabolic activity. Now that means they need energy. Now you produce energy in every cell in your body. So in a cell, there is a mitochondria. Mitochondria actually produces energy. You got to have oxygen, and you got to have glucose, and you got to have activation. And you got to have, for example, you got to have thyroid hormone in there also, because thyroid hormone is the spark plug to produce energy. Now the energy that's produced then runs that nerve. So if the nerve doesn't get proper energy, it's going to not function properly. So one of the main problems is decreased blood flow, not having proper blood flow. Again, then that doesn't bring the nutrients, and it doesn't bring the oxygen to the nerve. Another one can be poisons and toxins. So chemotherapy is a toxin in your system and can cause a toxic reaction in nerves. Also, other things that can do that are toxins like, I grew up as a farm boy, actually, and pesticides, a lot of farmers that used a lot of pesticides and breathed a lot of pesticides and chemicals in will tend to also get peripheral neuropathy because it's a toxin, it's a poison, and your nerves are very sensitive to toxins and poisons. Another one that causes it is statin drugs are a fairly big cause of it. Statin drugs, which are for high cholesterol, actually they block the production of cholesterol, and one of the things they block is your CoQ10. CoQ10 produces energy in the cell, and so if you're not taking CoQ10 along with your statin, you're more likely to get peripheral neuropathy. So I see patients that come in and have peripheral neuropathy, and one of the factors is a statin drug. So again, if they have like a statin drug, or if they have insulin resistance or diabetes, those factors add up to peripheral neuropathy. So three main problems: numbness, tingling, and balance disorders. Those are kind of the three major ones. But actually I'm going to I'm going to go from 3 to 7. Again, numbness, burning in the feet, cramping, sharp electric type of pain, pain while walking, and difficulty like restless leg syndrome, and then pricking and tingling. And I have a number of patients that come in. I suppose you could say as you get older, you're more likely to get peripheral neuropathy. And so a lot of people are real cautious about walking when they have peripheral neuropathy, especially in the wintertime. You know, they want to go outside, they don't walk because, you know, the ice plus peripheral neuropathy. So the burning pain actually comes from your brain. You have burning pain. That's a pain, because you can get pain, you kind of feel it in your feet, but it's actually coming from your brain. So from a neurology standpoint, and I practice functional neurology. Now functional neurology is you got to find out what's not working right. It could be the receptors like in your feet, it could be the nerves, it could be your spinal cord, it could be your cerebellum, it could be your brain stem, or it could be your parietal lobe where senses are involved. So you could have a problem at any one of those levels. And of course, in order to help somebody, you got to look at all the levels of the neurology, and then you got to look at all the metabolic factors. What's the blood sugar like? Do you have inflammation in your system? You see, you can do some tests for that, like blood tests. You can do, like for the metabolic, you can test for insulin resistance. That's called an A1C test. You can test for inflammation, like homocysteine and C-reactive protein. You can test for a lot of these factors, like with a comprehensive blood test. The neurology, that's more of a physical thing, testing for physical factors. So the three things you got to figure out with peripheral neuropathy is what's causing it. What's the underlying cause? Now, if you've had chemotherapy and you have peripheral neuropathy, you can't just assume that, well, it's just that. Because you still got to look at your blood sugar. You still got to look at the other factors. Because quite frankly, this is multifactorial. And most people that have peripheral neuropathy don't have like one thing that caused it. You might think, well, I had chemotherapy and it happened after that, so that must be the cause. Well, that is a causative factor, but you got to look at the other factors also. So some common causes, and I've already mentioned some. Blood sugar is a common one. Glucose. Involves the type of food that you eat too. Another one is autoimmune. I see peripheral neuropathy much more common with people who have autoimmune diseases, such as MS. Well, MS affects the nerves to begin with. MS, or rheumatoid arthritis, or the most common autoimmune disease, which is Hashimoto's, or thyroid problems. In fact, my focus, most of the patients that I see are autoimmune. My practice is about 80% autoimmune, And almost all of that is thyroid. Almost everybody that has a thyroid condition actually has an autoimmune called Hashimoto's, and that's testable. There's a blood test for it. But if you have an autoimmune, that will oftentimes attack the nerves also. So you have to rule that out, or rule it in. The other one is oxygen. You know, you have to have oxygen. Oxygen's critical to get to your nerves. So if you have an anemia, you could have an anemia that goes on. You could have a B12 deficiency. I mean, you've probably heard that if you don't have enough B12, you can get peripheral neuropathy from that. And then toxins, I've talked about the toxins. You know, there's chemotherapy, there's drug therapy, and then there's other environmental toxins. Inflammation can be a big deal, because if you have inflammation in your body, then you don't get the oxygen. If you have inflammation, it can go to the brain and cause inflammation, and you can't think as clear. You can have foggy. It can cause mood changes. Another one is talked about is neural. You have to look at all the neural levels. You got to look at the receptor, like in the feet or the hands. You got to look at the nerves coming up here. That could be damaged. You got to look at the spinal cord. You got to look at the brain stem up here. You got to look at the cerebellum here, and then you got to look at the parietal lobe in the brain. All those levels are important in determining causative factors. And then, of course, stress can do it too, because you know what happens to you when you're under stress. What's that?
Cortisol.
Cortisol gets involved. But you know, if the tiger's going to be chasing you, you run, and your body says, we need blood supply going to the big muscles. We don't need it in your digestion, because we're not worrying about you digesting your food for the next 5 minutes. You got to get away from the tiger. It also takes it away from your extremities. So if you're under constant stress, then you're not going to have as good a circulation to your hands and your feet. And you can measure that also. There's ways to measure that. So you got to realize stress is, and you know what? All doctors of all kinds in healthcare of everything recognize that disease is either 90% of all disease is either caused by or aggravated by stress. So if you have any symptoms, if you have any disease, by definition, there's stress involved. And if there's ongoing chronic stress, that's going to affect the circulation in your hands and your feet. That's another causative factor for peripheral neuropathy. So you got to find out what's causing it. Now you got to figure out how much nerve damage there is. How bad is it? So what I'm going to do in a couple minutes here is have you put ask for a volunteer, and we're going to see. I have a device called the Rebuilder that has a dial on it to see where you are. If you get up to 8 on the intensity here, which is the furthest it goes, and you don't feel it, then you have a lot of damage. But if you're at a 4, 5, or 6, then you don't have, or you can. This can be a benefit to you. I'll put it that way. Because you also have to decide if something is not going to benefit you. Why do it if it's not going to work?
Is that an assessment tool, or is that actually?
It's more of a therapeutic, but it's an assessment in the sense that you're supposed to be able to have enough sensation in your nerve to feel it, because it's electrical actually. Okay. Now it's electrical. It's not EMS. It's not a TENS unit, but it works with electricity. But it has a special type of wave that works with rebuilding your nerves. Because when you have peripheral neuropathy, there's 2 different kinds of nerves. There's what we call large diameter nerves. They're more the sensation nerves, so numbness and tingling would be like that. And then there's small diameter nerves. They're more the pain nerves. So you have different types of receptors. You know, there's pain, there's temperature, there's touch. So you have different kinds of receptors. And we also have to determine what receptors are being bothered with you. Now, if you have pain, that's a different receptor than numbness. So we got to find out what the causative factor is, and we also have to figure out what the how much damage, and then how much treatment would be required. Now I'm going to just show you some. The goal is to improve blood flow. Now this I use various types of light therapy. Now this is LED, but I also use laser therapy because laser therapy can increase blood supply and do healing. Now this is called cold laser, and it works quite well for tissues like peripheral neuropathy, also with different pain factors. What it does is helps release nitric oxide. Now nitric oxide will dilate blood vessels. Now, nitric oxide was discovered, and it plays a big role with heart conditions, with the dilation of blood vessels. And you've heard of people having a nitro with them. Well, it's nitric oxide because if your blood vessels are constricted and you take some, it'll dilate. And you've heard of Viagra. Viagra is nitric oxide also because it dilates the blood vessels so that there can be engorgement, and that's how that works. So nitric oxide is important to be able to produce nitric oxide for the nerves and the blood vessels in the foot. Okay, then vibration therapy. Now I use vibration therapy, variable vibration, so people put their foot on a vibrator and that helps to increase the circulation. Nutritional, there are certain things that are inflammatory that you eat and certain things that are not inflammatory, and that can make a big difference too. And inflammation equals pain. If you have pain, you have inflammation. I mean, they just go hand in hand. They're the same thing. So you can check your glucose. One of these at Walmart and check your glucose. This doesn't tell you your A1C, but it's a good thing you can monitor yourself at home. And when you have inflammation, then your arteries get sticky. So if you have inflammation in your arteries and they get sticky, especially in your legs, then you're not going to have good circulation. So it isn't just your heart that can have a problem with circulation. Your legs can too. Then we have to know how to stimulate small fiber nerve growth and decrease brain-based pain. Now the Rebuilder is a device. It runs with electricity. You put your feet, 1 foot in each tube, and the current goes back and forth. It goes from your nerve up to your spinal cord, and then it jumps across a connecting nerve and it goes back down, so there's a circuit that occurs. It's at a certain hertz frequency, which is 7.83, which works real well with rehabilitating nerves. So I'm going to show you that in just a moment here. Here's a guy that came in. I don't know if I can show this. Work. But this guy, Fred, came in. He'd had bypass surgery. He was on cholesterol medication. He was diabetic. I had high blood pressure. His heart rate was like 100 sitting down. I mean, he had a lot of stuff going on. And he came to a talk that I gave, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to show that. Maybe it won't. And your name is? My name is Fred. And your name is? Hello, my name is Fred here. Okay, Fred, and you came into our office here. What are you concerned about? Can you hear that? No, I don't think you can hear it. We'll skip it.
Is that the loudest it goes?
Okay, I don't know nothing going on.
Problem is I got this set up that when I touch it, it stops. So anyway, Fred came in and did vibration and Rebuilder and light therapy and that, and he hadn't gotten any results with anything else he had done. So let's demonstrate the Rebuilder. Now people call me if I had a guy come in. Was it Monday from?
Yeah. 200 miles away.
Yeah, because he said I was the closest one. So I've been using the Rebuilder. I guess the guy who's developed it is a PhD in something engineering, and he's developed this special, and he sells it. You can actually buy one. Now, it's not a bad idea to do it at home. So if I have patients, the ideal thing is that they would buy a unit and use it at home. I actually don't sell them, but you can buy them from the manufacturer if you want to, or a lot of my patients just come in and use them in my office and they don't have to buy them because they cost $700, $800. I think they're about $800. So they're not a real expensive therapy device, but it is that. So who would like to have a trial? All of you. Well, I don't. Now we're going to have to have a lottery, huh? I don't know. You pick.
Oh, I knew you would do that.
Well, who's the first one? Well, we can do 3 people. You have to have it done. Okay. As long as you're going to.
Here's the deal, because normally we have our support time, but I didn't know with this topic, it's really up to you guys. If you just want to go ahead with the hands-on part of it, or just kind of see what time it is, and if we don't get to talk, is that okay?
And you can ask me questions now. I'm kind of done.
We can change the water, and more people can try than just 3 of them for one.
And well, we're real concerned about cleanliness these days with everything we do.
Right.
And you got to stick your feet in. And
So right. Well, let's just try with 3.
Okay. Come on up. You got to take your shoes off.
The first 3 here in a row?
Now, here's how this works. The way I kind of went through it here. I come in, you talk to me. I ask you questions, and I do some neurological tests, and to determine what. Well, here I'm going to show you one thing here. I think you can all see this. You just sit there for right now. I'm going to do a test on your large diameter afferent nerves. So I want you to close your. Well, put your hands up first like this.
They don't have any feeling.
Where do you have it?
Both feet and hands.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
Who doesn't have it in their hands?
My hands are resolved.
Your hands are okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to do a test on her hands, and then I'll come and do yours to show a difference. So put your hands out like this. Now I'm going to touch 2 of your fingers, and if I touch these 2 fingers, I'm going to say how many are in between that, and you're going to say 1, right? And if I do this, you're going to say 2, and this one you're going to say 0, right? So how many fingers in between?
1.
Got that? She's a little slow. The messages go up 280 miles an hour. They should be like that.
Yeah, mine's mostly resolved, but the tips of my fingers are still a little.
Right. Close your eyes. How many there? Okay, so she's doing pretty good. Now let's do it with you. Close your eyes. That's slow. All right. Now you get the point, and I would do that a bunch of times.
You touched her.
What's that?
She probably didn't know you touched her.
No,
If mine were
yeah, I
bad
know.
like that, I wouldn't have.
I have nothing.
So you have quite a bit. Now I do it with the toes. Now most people have more problem with toes than hands. Most people do, because it's the furthest away from the brain. The furthest away from the brain, the worse it is, and your toes are further than your hands. So I'm going to do it on your toes. So close your eyes.
Oh, I was looking. She
Close your eyes.
closed.
How many in between those?
I felt something, but it just felt like you tapped one toe.
Okay. How many in between these 2?
I really don't know.
Okay, so that would be tests that I would do to see how bad it is. Now, some people come in and they can get it on one foot, but they can't get it on the other foot. Some people do fine on their hands, but others don't. And so that's a test we do. And then later on, after you go back and retest it and see how much better it is. So that would be peripheral. That's your large diameter afferents. Now,
I did not do the toenail polish. My sister did. I don't want you to think I'm sitting here being a big cheat. I can't even get eye makeup on.
After I've looked at feet so many times, I don't even see them or smell them anymore.
Oh, they smell wonderful after the shower.
All right. So that would be a test. Now those are large diameter afferents. Now if I were to test your pain fibers, I'd use like a pinwheel and see how that felt, and I'd compare both sides. And the nice thing about this also is that if you have pain, the way you get rid of pain is you stimulate your large diameter afferents. And so by stimulating large diameter afferents like this, it can reduce pain fibers, because pain fibers are the really small ones, and sensation are bigger ones. So the bigger ones, if you stimulate those, will take the pain away from the smaller ones. Now that's how you've heard of TENS units. That's how a TENS unit works. It stimulates the larger ones. This is not a TENS unit, although actually this has 3 settings on it. One is TENS, but I don't use the TENS unit for the EMS. I use the rebuilder one. Okay, so that's how I would test, and I would do other tests too, but that's how I would test. So you would get, peripheral neuropathy, hands and feet. You would be mostly, well, I didn't test your feet, but your hands aren't that bad. Your hands aren't as bad as hers are. All right, come on up here.
And the rebuilder can also be, we put pads on the hands.
Oh.
And then also, you're saying for that
Yeah.
therapy too, you're able to do your hands also.
Hands and
You can do hands and feet, so it's not just limited to your feet.
Yeah, at the same time.